Hey cats, Ed Midsole here. My voice has come back finally. Today I've got some shoe reviews for you, my sort of midpoint of testing, all of them round about 50 miles, most of them really more prolific within the shoe rotation this year. An update on the light and breezy Endorphin Speed 4 from Saucony, the strange case of the Cielo 1X from Hoka. Have I been having a blast in the Asics Novablast 4? Bit of a state this one, the Endorphin Elite from Saucony as well. Got a lot of miles into these four, and I want to give you my opinions and views on them if they've changed a little bit from the initial reviews. Let's get to it. Thanks for tuning in, people. It's always appreciated. Do hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like too. It really helps the channel out, as does leaving a comment for the algorithm. Dankeschön. Starting off with the Endorphin Speed 4 from Saucony. I think this one came in round about February of this year, but I've already put a fair number of miles onto it, and I've got to be honest, it's become one of my favourite shoes to utilise within the rotation, within training over the last few weeks. It's kind of become my go-to for just about everything, really. I wasn't 100% on it on my initial review. I did have a bit of arch pain really on one of the shoes, but that's completely disappeared. The shoe has become a little bit more flexible, I have to be honest, not quite as rigid as it was out the box. Big improvement for me has been a result of changing those laces out from the very stretchy, flexible ones that you get stock. I think these are from a pair of Air Jordan 1s, but they seem to work pretty well, and they've really improved the lockdown. Just made the shoe a much more enjoyable kind of option. You just get a more consistent fit across the top of the foot. You can latch the foot down onto the base of the midsole, really. Just feels like everything's working a bit better together. Less messing around and having to dial stuff in is always good. You got like a family, a dog, a job that absorbs your time. The last thing you want to do is messing around with getting the lockdown right on your shoes. You just want to get out there and enjoy yourself. Outsole is improved, yes. I wouldn't say it's absolutely perfect, but it is better than the last few iterations of the Endorphin Speed. I do feel if you're running on wet concrete or in some sort of debris-like areas, you know, the stuff that like falls off trees, like catkins and things like that, they do seem to clog up the actual grid pattern here, and you do feel a little bit of slipping and sliding on toe off, but it's only really in those wet conditions. In the dry, it's absolutely fantastic, but there's just something about the rubber that's being used that doesn't really like wet conditions. So certainly better than the previous version, that's for sure, but there's still room for improvement. You may remember from my initial review I had some issues with that winged plate. That's completely disappeared. I don't know if any of you out there have had similar issues. Let me know in the comments. It's yet to rear its ugly head once again though, which is great news. I think they could just go back to a standard nylon plate here rather than with the wings. It just feels like it's adding a bit of extra weight that we didn't have in the V1 and 2. Losing a few grams off a very usable daily shoe is always a good thing. And the upper is perhaps a little bit generous. I do hark back to the V1 where it was more like a sock, and that was perfectly fine for most folks, but I think the majority of people will get on okay with the upper. Just think I've got a weird foot maybe. Little wear to speak of whatsoever at 56 miles. So yeah, very happy with this one. It's become a staple in the shoe rotation, and it will stay there for a while too. If I've got to grade it though, I think I'll probably give it a grade B. I think there is a bit of room for improvement with the outsole, but it's great for faster paced efforts and some daily training too. Just wish it was a touch lighter and they could improve that forefoot grip somewhat. Cielo X1 next from Hoka. Now it's a bit of an odd fish, this one, and it certainly has a mermaid-like upper, that's for sure. I did find it a tad warm to be using on some of the hotter days we've had here in the UK. It's a nice smooth ride, it's very forgiving, it's quite compressive. There's some nice return and bounce to that midsole. But I do have to say at this point, I do think it's a little bit overpriced. I think they're about $250, are they? Something like that? That's a lot of cash. I have to say there are some better shoes that come in lower than that in terms of price. And also don't forget, this is like a 40mm stack. You want that super stack, go for the Prime X from Adidas, coming in at around about the same price. I just feel like you're getting a little bit more cushion, and the weight's about the same too in terms of the Adidas Prime X and this one. I just feel that the shoe isn't quite at the same lofty heights, no pun intended, as the Prime X. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like the fit. I've got used to those laces, which are almost like ribbons, and it's nowhere near as generous as some of the other past Hoka offerings in terms of the upper. But I think the strange laces and that upper thickness, along with the slightly outlandish looks, make this one a bit of an acquired taste. I think perhaps if you're looking for a race shoe with some of that super foam, but you don't want something that's overtly unstable, then the Cielo X1 could be a really good option. Perhaps if the Prime X was just too lofty for you, then this one's a little bit more down to earth. No pun intended. I do feel though that the Prime X is a slightly more forgiving shoe overall if you want to run some distance, so like long runs. The Hoka feels like an attempt at that shoe, but it doesn't have quite all the major benefits there. Very durable so far, and you would expect that. There's quite a thick spread of rubber here on the outsole. I've got no major wear whatsoever, though the outsole cutouts do suck up quite a bit of dirt and debris. Pretty easy to clean though. Just get your artist's paintbrush out. Don't like bang them on the floor or anything, because you might damage the carbon plate. It's certainly an ocean liner type vibe in the Cielo X1. Can't really have any major issues with it so far, other than that big price tag. Oh yeah, the upper particularly absorbent. I got stuck out in a storm in these the other day, and it did take on quite a bit of weight. So a good, somewhat faster tempo shoe with some long run capabilities. I'm going to give this one a C so far, just about average really, but sadly the price is not, so could do better, Hoka. There's no problem that you can't remedy with a good blaster by your side. The Novablast 4 here then, I've got about 50 miles into these, and I've got to say it's a cheaper and slightly less cushioned Super Blast, and that speed sandal spotters is no put down whatsoever. Novablast 4's bewitched me a little bit, like a siren of the seas, singing its tune for daily runs, and I just can't quite resist using it, even for some speedier sessions as well. The upper, very similar to the Super Blast in some ways. It's a little bit thicker, a little bit more padded, especially in that toe box area. They very carefully selected a density of foam here that it facilitates a bit of bounce and impact protection, but on the other hand it's sort of comforting as well. Capable of some quicker paces where you up that effort level, and it leaves a lot of other shoes and contenders behind in the dust, mainly due to the fact that it's such a nimble shoe on foot. Doesn't feel clunky at all. I do like the surface area here of the Novablast. It's certainly in the same kind of category as the Super Blast. It's doing the same types of things, but of course not depleting your bank account quite so badly. There's little wear to report in terms of the rubber, but some of the exposed midsoles kind of creasing up a little bit. There's a little bit of shredding here up at the top. It's not too bad. It's certainly not sort of detrimental to the performance whatsoever. You get loads of muck and grit though, and all these little cutouts and everything. Similar problem really to the Super Blast. Those are little stones and little bits of glass or whatever wedged in there. The foam degradation's mainly around that sort of trampoline-like area here in the forefoot, and the weight-relieved heel as well. Not quite so bad in that area. It's certainly not tearing up or crumbling away or anything. It just is creasing, and if that's a problem to you, then, well, most running shoes are going to do that, so you might want to rethink your hobbies and stuff. Sadly, the upper's stained quite badly on this one. I have been trying to clean it with all sorts of different methods and stuff, but yeah, it just doesn't ever look as good as it did out the box. But it's a running shoe, and that's going to happen. You can't run away from that one. So really enjoying this one so far. I think if I have to give it a grade at this point, the Novablast 4 is going to get a B+. Really nice, lively shoe, living up to my expectations. You can use it for loads of different things as well. Perhaps if you have a slightly more muted colourway, you can even go down the pub and play pool wearing this one. Okay, something a bit lighter now on foot, the Saucony Endorphin Elite. This one is caked in mud. I didn't have a chance to clean it because I've been using it just now. Really like the breathability of the upper on this one, around about 50 miles again. Again though, with the Saucony shoes, I kind of feel like I want to take the laces out of this one, put in some standard laces without the flex, and I think the actual lockdown that I'll achieve with this shoe will be vastly improved. It is a very rigid shoe, so when you get your foot in the shoe, you really need to get a good lockdown to achieve the best results with it. It's just not going to perform that well for you otherwise. It is a extremely rigid shoe. Durability on race shoes is always a bit of an odd one. Some people expect them to last like 300 or 400 miles. I think the expectation level's a bit high there. I haven't got any major degradation here. The medial side of the heel here has a little bit of tearing of the foam, but the rubber actually looks fantastic. It's very similar to the stuff that we've seen on some of the Adidas race shoes. It's got that bit of texture to it. It's very sticky as well. It's certainly a firmer shoe, I have to say that. It's perhaps not your choice if you're going to be doing a longer run with a load of slower miles in there. This one's very much if you're testing out your top speeds, or perhaps you're going into threshold effort and you're going to stay there for a while. I know a few people had some issues with the heel area of this shoe with some rubbing and blistering. I've had none of that whatsoever. It's always a really comfortable shoe over the top of the foot, and there's good space here in the toe box as well. I feel the width is pretty decent. Not really had any major issues with the tongue either. It doesn't sort of get caught up and overlap. All in all, I've been enjoying the Power Run HD foam in the Endorphin Elite very much. Would like to race in this one very soon. There's a couple of 10Ks that I've got in the books, and also some half marathons later in the year, so we will have an opportunity to get out in these. And I don't think they're going anywhere too soon. There's new colourways that have just been released, so it's still got its moment to shine, the Endorphin Elite. If I've got to give this one a grade, I'm going to go with a B+ so far. Grip's been great, even in wet weather too. Just going to switch out those laces and see if I can really improve the lockdown somewhat, or at least the consistency of the lockdown without having to worry too much about it. Really need to clean that shoe. Don't worry, I'll do it straight away. So that's all 4 shoes in today's midpoint review update. Have you been using any of them? Do you enjoy the Speed 4? How's the Novablast 4 been working out for you? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. Musical interlude for you. I've been dipping back into some old school rave tracks from the 90s. I think with all the talk of the new general election that's going to happen here on the 4th of July, it's got me reminiscing about what things were like back then. I've got to be honest, things were a lot better then. Maybe things can only get better from now on as well. One of the tracks is called Sesame's Treat from the Smarties. They released this one with loads of samples from, you know, your favourite American kind of kids show. I remember it being a really big hit over here in the UK as well. I think it might have got to like number 1, number 2 or something like that. But yeah, it was everywhere at one point. It was at the height of that sort of rave culture here in the UK. And the label it was on, Suburban Bass, were one of these sort of earlier sort of rave labels too, or I say that hardcore and jungle. I mean, you could call it a bit of a sellout really, but I absolutely love the string section that comes in a little bit further into the track. It's very uplifting. It was very much a piece of music from the time. It's just a good bit of fun really, and I think you put it on now, it just puts a smile on your face. And you know, there's a lot of music around that doesn't do that right now, that kind of makes everyone just feel a bit miserable, I suppose, and I'm just tired of feeling miserable. I'm not interested in that. Give me the new radicals every day, you know. You get what you give. Anyway, go and check this one out, or anything from the Suburban Bass label around that time in the 90s. I think you might enjoy it. Some good ones from Chrome and Time, and also DJ Hype as well. Thanks for tuning in, people. It's always appreciated. Hit that subscribe button, and also give this video a thumbs up like. Drop us a comment too for the algorithm. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you